Hey guys, BNS here. If you didn't see my message on Twitter, I am actively reviewing people's resumes, and I'm also taking a look at their social media profiles and taking 30 minutes out of my day to just do a call with them, answer any questions they may have, and help them land a web developer gig. So, I just got off the phone with Daphne, and she was a pleasure to speak with. As you can see, she has an amazing smile and great personality. She told me that she was transitioning from a remote healthcare position to getting into web development. She had started out with WordPress, and now she's teaching herself HTML, CSS, and really focused heavily on JavaScript. She's done a few different interviews already, but unfortunately the pay, especially starting out, the pay didn't necessarily match what she was looking for because she's already been established in another career field. So that can definitely be, a bit of a snag for some people. But let me go ahead. I'm just going to run through the process and touch on several of the points that Daphne and I spoke about throughout our call. And I just wanted to get it out there, put it on video. Daphne was very happy with the feedback, and she was comfortable with sharing her resume and leaving her personal details on here. She said, if seeing her resume can help anyone else, then she said that she would like to be able to contribute to the community. Let's see, starting off, has a nice header. I do dig the layout here. It's definitely great to have your name on the top. One thing, and this is just personal preference, but one thing I would recommend is putting the contact info right under the name. Definitely, I think helps because that's what recruiters are typically going to look for, in my opinion, based upon what a couple of recruiters have said to me. They'll just kind of look at maybe one or two of the first results or positions on your resume and then decide whether or not you're a fit for it and reach out to you within 30 seconds to a minute of seeing your resume. So bear in mind that they're looking through a ton of different resumes, and it's definitely helpful to make their job easy because recruiters and HR personnel are going to be your first line of contact to any company. It's very rare that any hiring manager would reach directly out to you. Again, they're typically going to go through different channels right off the bat, and it helps to really market your resume to them as opposed to marketing it to the hiring manager themselves. Because once you've already gotten through those gatekeepers, be it a recruiter or be it a HR professional, then they've kind of vouched for you, vouched for your personality, and said, hey, I think they might be a fit for this role. And then they'll pass on your resume to the hiring manager. And typically they'll set up a call with the hiring manager with, in my experience, not really getting much of their weigh-in or feedback on it. So again, I definitely can't push this point hard enough. Really tailor it for HR and tech recruiting professionals. Okay, so now that I've beaten a dead horse on that point, again, I would recommend just making it as user-friendly as possible for them, putting this here. Another thing that I had mentioned to Daphne is she has a fantastic smile. And while on a lot of websites that speak about resumes, they say don't add a photo, limit your application to 1 or 2 pages, if that. In my personal experience, I've gotten quite a bit of feedback from HR professionals and again, hiring tech recruiters. And that's one thing that they actually commented on and said that they enjoyed about my resume was including a photo of myself because, well, let's face it, when you think about human psychology, people just connect with other people more likely than they would a symbol or an abstract visual. And for a little bit of proof of concept, I actually even recently crowdsourced that question on the SPAC Media Twitter account here. So let me just pop over to Moments. And I have a few things listed here. I'm not sure if this is actually shown as public, but if you go down to surveys, you can see a handful of things that I've polled people on Twitter. Various things about emojis, avatars, that sort of thing. But this is the one I was specifically talking about. asking if a profile avatar with a face or a logo grabs attention more. And roughly 75% of people said, out of 75 votes, said that it grabbed their attention more than something abstract. So it's definitely just a facet of human psychology you cannot ignore. Definitely add a photo on your resume if you have a great smile. If you have RBF, resting bitch face or something like that. Maybe watch a good comedy movie or something like that to try to kind of work up a genuine smile. Find a way to get yourself in the mood so you then can present your best self. So we've covered the contact details and adding a little bit of personalization to that. So on Daphne's resume, she does have the standard sections of employment, education, skills. One thing I would recommend is adding a highlight of your skills to the top of your resume. Again, as I mentioned, this is something that tech recruiters and HR personnel are really going to be looking for. The first thing on their checklist is, does this person list the skills that the hiring manager said that they want for this job? Or, I would say the majority of the time, the HR recruiter or tech recruiter will go and look up a job description and then see what skills are listed on the pre-existing job description, and then craft their own job description and posting that way. So it definitely helps to go to websites like Indeed and that sort of thing to see what skills are commonly being used, and then definitely highlight those on your resume. Okay, so moving right along, one thing I would recommend for any positions that you've worked is list the city and state near the time period worked. A lot of people are interested in actually seeing that. I've had several recruiters request that in the past when I didn't have it. Let's see, in terms of bullet points, she follows a fantastic structure, essentially using the rule of three. If you're not familiar with that, the rule of three is basically a way to think about human short-term memory. On average, most people can only hold a few items in their working memory at one time. So definitely a good way to monopolize on attention. Famous companies do this. Steve Jobs did it for a lot of his presentations to make sure that they were impactful and stuck in people's minds. So definitely follow the rule of three when it comes to bullet points. 4 is still okay. 5 is pushing it. You don't want to add too many bullet points unless it was your most recent job or contract and you want to really highlight the work that you did with it. Okay, on the previous note as well, where I was mentioning the city and state, I would also do that under education, just so people know if it's remote or what state it's in. Because they will have to verify that information. If it's a good company, they'll need to verify that information before they hire you. Okay, and then digging into the meat of the bullet points here, Daphne did a few things right, and I like that on this second position here, for example, she put in perform quality audits and analyzes call data with 99.9% accuracy. It's always a wise approach to put in facts and figures. How much money did you save the company? How much money did you make the company? What level of quality did you provide? People are still very attracted to numbers. Again, it's one of those marketing and psychology principles that it will definitely help you out. A couple of things that I do see on here, I like that she didn't put in, first person tone of voice, or I should say writing tone. Instead of saying I analyze customer service processes and that sort of thing, you really do want to shy away from using the word I and me and my, the first person quite a bit, because that does come off as narcissistic, even if you don't intend it to, just because there are so many bullet points on a typical resume, and just general points on a resume, that it's just going to be a repeating pattern of, I did this, I did that, my team did this, my team did that, and it just, for better or worse, comes across as a bit narcissistic. So that's definitely something I would recommend avoiding. And Daphne did a great job of that. Maybe this is just personal preference, but one thing that I would put is like adding an S to things that you're presently doing. So for example, instead of analyze customer service process, I would put analyzes customer service processes. Same thing with like perform quality audits. I would put performs quality audits and analyzes call data with 99.9% accuracy. And one thing I would recommend, I'm not totally against adding sort of a gray area to some of the stats that you add to your profile and resume, but one thing I would recommend is 99.9% is just kind of one of those cliche numbers. I would recommend kind of bumping that down to make it look, you still want to look good, you still want to grab someone's attention, but you want it to look a little bit more realistic. I would put 85% or something of that nature. Let's see. But yeah, other than that, I do like the overall layout quite a bit. There's good use of fonts and good use of font weight. I do like that, like each one of these positions is italicized. Definitely italicized and bolded. It does make a more visually appealing presentation, and it's easier to skim the profile, as I mentioned. And there's no wacky fonts and no major differences between the different font faces on the sections of the resume, so that's fantastic. One key thing that I would recommend, and I spoke with Daphne about this, is under skills, because most tech recruiters and HR professionals are going to be using automated systems that are kind of like a search engine for resumes that they intake, it is wise to put in as many skills as you have touched in the past on your resume. Now, again, you want to highlight your core competencies, but you want to highlight your core competencies at the front of the resume, but it's still wise to list some other things, software that you've worked with, tools that you've worked with, maybe courses that you've taken relating to the job, and kind of list some of those skills under your experience for each role. Again, keep it short. You can make the text a little bit smaller, and this is just going to help highlight your resume for those specific search terms that people are using. Let's see. Another thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is this is only a one-page resume, and a lot of people do that. They'll just list like their past few jobs, and believe it or not, I had started out a number of years ago after I had requested a professional to rewrite my resume. And I went and made my resume, I believe it was 3 pages long. And at first I thought it was a bit absurd and a little kooky because it went against the knowledge that most people are writing online about resumes. But I can say from personal experience, it did work. It had landed me a couple of different gigs for search engine optimization that I normally just didn't have the resume chops for. So it's definitely a wise idea to list as much relevant experience on your resume as possible. Really fill it out. Add, again, as I mentioned, a personal touch to it, and just provide, details that people may be looking for. You want to really strike a balance between readability and also having that solid resume for those internal search engines. Excuse me. And I'm also going to quickly touch on best practices for LinkedIn if you're job hunting. Daphne did a great job. She has a nice professional photo here. One thing I would recommend for the headline, specifically if you're looking for work, is say something like seeking front-end developer position, something of that nature, depending upon whichever position you're looking for. Um, and then again, essentially do the same thing that you're doing in your resume with skills and with your kind of a short about me here. Feel free to make that nice and long because again, people are going to be finding your profile via keywords and via the search on LinkedIn. So definitely feel free to stuff it with relevant keywords and skills and projects that you've worked on. Let's see. Okay, and then in the experience section, I do agree that this does look nice and clean, but again, I would recommend, because of the searching, to include and kind of strike that balance between visually appealing and search friendly. Another tip that I had recommended is there are several courses online that are free by large institutions like MIT, Harvard, Stanford, that sort of thing. And you can find those and list that as your education experience. Those are still really strong name brand institutions that will still definitely help you get your foot in the door and kind of add just a nice little touch to your resume that I think grabs people's attention. Let's see, we'll just forego the skills and endorsements for now. Well, on that note, under endorsements, I would recommend, if you've worked with anyone, providing them a professional reference on LinkedIn is still beneficial. And then, not necessarily requesting one back, but test the waters, see if they really liked working with you as well. Ask them if they'd be comfortable, providing you a little bit of feedback and a short recommendation. That definitely does make a difference. Recruiters and HR professionals do, in fact, check out your social media profiles, especially LinkedIn. So it's definitely a good thing to have on there. It makes their job easier. They can see that, okay, this person was easy to work with, and so likes their sense of humor or personality or what have you. Okay, and then I'm not going to dig too much into these other social media profiles just because we're running at about 20 minutes, but I do like that Daphne is adding her portfolio and memory game and other things that she's developed to GitHub. Most hiring managers do like to see that. And let's see, she's also on CodePen. Does have some decent work there. Some CSS skills, so that's cool. Let's see, active on Twitter, which is great. Providing engaging, humorous content, that's also great. Good use of hashtags. I would recommend tapping into a couple of popular communities on Twitter, like Women in Tech, and I think they also have like a Women of Color in Tech sort of hashtag that you can also monopolize on a little bit. And this is just from maybe a personal preference or personal experience, but I would recommend either listing your other social media profiles in your header image here, or providing a nice quote that kind of summarizes your personality or your philosophy a little bit more. But overall, great Twitter presence and good LinkedIn presence there. Good job on GitHub. You can get a little bit more traction if hiring managers see maybe some open source projects that you've collaborated on or contributed to. Let's see. Okay, she also does have a blog here, and she's keeping track of her progress, which is fantastic. A great way to really start building your brand as a junior developer. Because again, you don't need to be an expert by any stretch of the imagination. If you're great at communicating and you're laid back and you're personable, I would say 9 times out of 10, that really trumps the technical skills that you may be lacking in, because that can all be taught and trained as long as you're an easy person to work with. Okay, good jump page here on GitHub, and yeah, that about wraps it up for Daphne. It was a pleasure speaking with her once again. If there are any recruiters or tech professionals looking for someone who does have several years of remote experience and they're okay with working with someone who's a little bit junior, Daphne is a fantastic go-to. I did recommend to her, because she's looking for more of a corporate gig, to start learning TypeScript and Angular, just because those are large in enterprise. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much all we have. Again, this is BNS with Spac.co. If you guys would like a free resume review like this or a social media presence review like this, please feel free to reach out on Twitter at SpacMedia. You can also reach me directly. Just search for my name, Benjamin Spac, and you'll find me on LinkedIn and several other social media platforms. And another fantastic resource I would recommend is a career-focused web developer community that we are putting together. And you can get to this by just going to www.spac.co, and that'll get you directly into our Discord developer community. Alrighty, well, I hope you guys have a good one and look forward to helping you out in the next video.